Autumn. How many days remain for you to roam around this harrowed earth, so painfully and deeply scarred by failures, mostly only failures, not just of your own, but of so many lost and wasted lives, and, worst of all, too many friends who died too young. I could write epitaphs in all eternity just to bewail them and cry out their sorrows and my own, for what they failed in, what they never could accomplish, all their unfinished, invaluable work, and most of all, the loss of their two precious souls. But they are still out there somewhere, waiting maybe for another opportunity, or for a better world, but they could wait for that forever, since we haven't seen much betterment for some millennia. Sorrow keeps me company with falling leaves, in flaming colours red of blood or love or both, while no tears are enough to cry out all the pain of this so wasted, tragical and futile life and world. In a musical sense, what is life? An accurate question which pinpoints the essence not only of life but of existence. In the beginning was not the word but music, and what on earth was all that music about? We certainly hadn't heard all that jazz before, and the question is if it sounded at all, so at least it could not have sounded bad. Let me put it like this. In the beginning there was a kind of flow, of some kind of idea that must have been musical, because it produced such a tremendous effect that we had a kind of big bang. It's impossible to recollect or reconstruct, but it certainly was there, and it was music as the source of everything, as the dark horse behind everything that rides, and that is life itself, the only motivation of which is music. Reggie Perrin, analysis of the famous syndrome. It's not a crisis, it's just a character development. Suddenly one morning you wake up to find, to your amazement, that your life was all futility, and you see through everything with clearness for the first time, and recognize the vanity of human wishes, toil and bother. What have I been doing all my life, you ask yourself, astonished, and you realize you haven't lived at all. All of a sudden, sex becomes dispensable. You see through all your partners of the past that you don't need them. Love transcends into a higher plane of soulmates. Endless friendship suddenly becomes the only acceptable relationship. And you don't even need your property and money. Suddenly detachment from all worldly matters becomes vital and much more important than materialistic fuzziness and all the world. And love takes on a religious aspect. You turn a philosopher, stuck with your head in heaven and enjoying it, at last discovering the real reality among the clouds. You wake up from a nightmare of ridiculous concerns, like from an illness, to turn into something natural and human for a change. Congratulations, you just made it getting normal and converted from this mundane mess of mainstream brainwash. The suicide party of David Braithwaite. It was a very strange festivity some years ago at Corinth, Greece, the story of which Dr. Sandy told me, who was there. Let's leave the host alone. He had the party of his life, an unforgettable farewell, to which he generously summoned not only all his friends, but any kind of wayward outsider and displaced person. Many hippies, alcoholics, tramps and tarts, with even children, whom he gave a most luxurious dinner, with food and drink that never saw an end, Retsina wine and Greek salads galore, the atmosphere replenished with both joy and sorrow, Everybody laughed and had a good time, while at the same time no one's eye was dry. When the eccentric host made his farewell and welcome speech, with ample thanks to everyone just for their coming, to be present as a delightful company to his demission. No one thought at first that he was serious, but he had actually invited all available Bohemians in Greece just for his company and give them all a party for his funeral. What people best remembered afterwards were those almost unnoticeably small remarks of bitterness, which indicated a most overwhelming disappointment in the field of love and women. He had loved, but more than what was good for him, and unsuccessfully. This is no story really for a poem, but should rather be the subject of a play, which shall be written, with the documentary material as its delicate, heartbreaking base, maybe next time I go back to Greece. In defense for the delicacy of ideals, don't cut my dreams down. Do whatever harm you will to me and to my life, but let me keep up my ideals, since I can see no other purpose of my life and nothing else to really live for. They say it's dangerous to wake up a somnambulist, but even worse, and almost worse than any crime, is to bereave a person of his natural ideals, his love, his piety and dreams. But real ideals can never really be defeated. They keep on coming back. Creativeness can never have a setback, but can only be renewed. So there is actually no danger, really. Just let the somnambulist walk on in safety on his clouds and smiling in his dreams, and no harm will come out of it, while no one knows what fearful things could happen if you touch and crush an individual's universe, conserved well in a dream, but that might well contain the key to universal safety for humanity. The lone wolf's story in a world where wolves were exterminated, or an ordinary immigrant's story. The alien's argument. Sorry, I don't belong to you. You are a different kind of aliens whose language I don't speak, whose laws I don't accept, and whose mentality is alien to freedom, since you don't accept alternative mentalities of freedom, feelings, softness, sensitivity, and that capacity to feel life by antennae, vibrating in alien dimensions and accepting other languages than just the physical and spoken ones. So I must be an alien to you, preserve my oversensitive integrity behind an oyster's shell of shyness, and if my work doesn't please you or can't be understandable to you, so let me then at least continue working as an alien without you. Blind love. You just have to face the music. Love will ever play the dirtiest tricks on you and never be the same, but always puzzle you, upset you, never be reliable, and always blindfold you, so that you never can see clear reality, but always must fall victim to it as to love. Since blind reality of love will always lead you quite astray. You will love anyone who isn't worth it, and you will be cruelly abused by anyone who just will take your blindfolded condition as an opportunity to lead you any stray path down to hell just for the fun of it, and you will end up as a wreck, completely crushed, like in a shipwreck, all entangled in the shattered ruins of your lost ideals. But there is always a way out and a salvation. Just keep your blindfold on, refuse to compromise with false reality, continue challenging the cruelty of the world by countering it and opposing it with your alternative, your own created world of beauty, which most certainly will outlast this vain world of futile nonsense. The object of your love will constantly play foul on you, and most outrageously, but that must never check your love, which ever must keep flowing to enrich, if nothing else, at least the spiritual world of sentient beings, which ever will be hungering and needing more of that true love of honesty, which is the reason for your life. Through the minefield, let me guide you carefully across the minefield of abysmal trenches, thorns and scorpions, poison ivy and what not, so that your bare feet will not stumble into any bomb, but tread on safely like on clouds with maximum security, like a professional sleepwalker. Just rely on me and hold my hand, and your poor blind sight will not lead you wrong, but safely to the other side through any ambush that will miss you most completely, since I will make you invisible to any danger, any rotten scoundrel that would trap you, who instead shall fall into his own deceit. You may be sure I will see to it thoroughly. So be not apprehensive or afraid of anything. Just keep your fingers crossed and prayers going, and my love shall save you from whatever, so that nothing evermore will threaten you again. This was compared by a colleague with a beautiful poem by Yeats, He Wishes for the Cloths of Heaven. Had I the heavens embroidered cloths, inwrought with golden and silver light, the blue and the dim and the dark cloths of night and light and the half-light, I would spread the cloths under your feet, but I, being poor, have only my dreams. I have spread my dreams under your feet. Tread softly, because you tread on my dreams. When anger hits you on the nose, 9/11 and all that. When anger hits you on the nose, the urge to strike back gets on overwhelming. But you can't strike back while still your nose is bleeding. You just have to swallow it and bide your time. And as your anger thus is laid to rest, you soon forget about it. And the motivation disappears to do something about it. And thus nothing sensible gets done about the insult which remains buried alive, where it infests and grows until it reaches some infection stage, and then the trouble is completely introvert, like a sore inner wound you only feel but cannot dress, and turns perhaps into some metastasis. Still, that is far better than to actually strike back in blindness, hatred and revenge, of short-sighted brain bankruptcy, with no idea of the inevitable consequences. Thus we have this vicious circle of political insanity, each madman of his own fanatical establishment, just thinking of his own group egoistic interests, manipulated into power for destructive reasons, like the Bush impostor in the White House, stealing presidency from Al Gore, whose main concern is universal welfare, global warming problems and the future, while the short-sighted impostor lunacy, by sheer incompetence, turns international discussions into failures, triggering the 9/11 sabotage attacks against civilization, which politically then are turned into a crazy war merry-go-round, manipulated forth against Afghanistan at first, and then Iraq, by the oil mafia governing the president, and thus is world politics turned into a mess of trouble, just to close the eyes to much more vital problems, like the melting ices in Antarctica and Greenland, that will drown the world if nothing brings it to a halt. Natural problems of man's own short-sighted making that concerns humanity, the future and all nature, clinically free from egoistic thinking and vendettas, say no more. I stifle and can only pray and cry, forgetting all about my bleeding nose.